Really, what I'm going to be doing this morning, I'm going to just kind of start pulling apart miscellaneous pieces, really easy pieces that, I mean, it's not going to take any mapping out to do. The stuff like the air intake, a couple hoses. I probably might do some vacuum hoses as well. But I'm going to map it out. This is really all notes for myself. Because I've never done this before, I'm a little bit familiar with the Suzuki Samurai engine, but I need this video as my own personal notes so that I can come back and use it as a reference so I know what came off of where and which hoses connect to what and which electrical plugs go where and whatnot. So as much as I hope that this is helpful for anyone else who sees it, this is really what it comes down to is I need a visual aid for when I go put everything back together. Anyway, I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm just sitting here staring out the window of my shed going, gosh, I am really nervous about this. But yeah, I'm ready for it. I just got to make the first steps. Once I get it started, I'm going to be a little more excited about it. So anyhow, let's get to it. Let's start taking stuff apart. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to go straight for the air intake. Before I do any of this, I'm going to leave myself some notes here. This here is loose. I believe that this is part of the EGR system. It just connects right here to this deal. It's supposed to slip on, but it's just loose. So you have a single hose, a vacuum hose that comes up, and it connects to the air intake. Following that on the other side, you have another air hose that has I believe that might be like a one-way valve kind of deal, and it comes around the back side here. Let's see if I can't move this, but there's a what would you call that? I'm not even sure. It's like a water pump maybe. The radiator connects to it, but it's kind of down here next to all this. I'll kind of zoom in a little bit. There's two hoses that connect to that, and it's on the left side. So what I'm looking at is down here to the left. And don't mind the goats, they're being silly. But other than that, I have this main line which goes straight into the valve cover. It has a T off, and that T connects down here to a looks like a Schrader valve, or I'm sorry, not a Schrader valve, but like a barbed valve or something. So basically, those are the notes that I have for that. So I'm going to go ahead and just take off the air intake. Okay, so what I can see right off the bat for the air intake is obviously you have a 10 millimeter bolt right here. A little further down, you have a 10 millimeter here, and a 10 millimeter a little further back. Other than that, there's some Phillips heads, and I think that's about it. Okay, so I got just the, you had a bolt on this side, and there's actually two nuts on the bottom side. It looks like you got some studs on the bottom. I want to see if I can't just kind of pull this as an entire assembly. We got a boot there, that's loose. Let's pull that 10 millimeter off really quick. Just kind of, okay, really quick. A little side note here. On the bottom side of your air intake, you have a small little hose. See if I can't follow that. That connects down to a little tiny pipe or a little inlet down on the intake manifold. You can see this little teeny tiny guy right there, which is right next to the this main. It's off of this main pipe where that T is. This bottom line, this little line connects to the little inlet next to the one that this T comes off of. So I'm going to just go ahead and take that hose with it. Which means I'm going to have to pop that off. I'm going to have to pop that off. There it is. This is the one off of the T that goes onto the radiator. Or I'm sorry, the air intake. It came off the air intake and had that T that came off this way. I'm going to go ahead and just pull this piece right off. I want that to also go with all my other pieces over here. I got a little hasty with the tube, and I just kind of gave it a tug off. I didn't really want to fight with it. I know I'm going to end up replacing that anyway. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm able to take this entire piece now and get it out of my way and move on to the next. Okay, so starting straight back from the distributor, if I remember, that might be the what's it called? The throttle advance. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and take that hose. It comes off straight down into this T, and from this T it goes straight across to beside the carburetor. Or it goes straight into the carburetor. On the other part of the T, it comes straight down, and you have this red, I want to say it's the VSV. It's a valve switch or a vacuum switching valve. So again, right off of the distributor to the T goes into the carburetor, and then down into the furthest outmost plug on the VSV. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull that one straight out. I'm going to take these clips. I'm going to set that aside. Take this clip as well. Set that aside. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that. Okay, I guess I'm not going to. I'm going to pull this hose out. I'm going to see if I can't just pull that straight off the carb. There it is. I'm going to go ahead and set that aside. So, coming off of the innermost part of the VSV, we're going to go ahead and take that off and come up to the hose on the VSV. Oh, that's on there. Tug. I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to just kind of mark these out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take some electrical tape, or I'm sorry, duct tape, and I'm just going to wrap it around there, leave myself a nice good tag. Okay, that did not quite work. I'm going to wrap it around, and I'm going to leave a nice tag on it, and I'm going to leave just a little bit hanging off over the edge. Okay, this is not working. Just like that, just so I can kind of come back and peel up on it. I'm going to take a Sharpie and I'm going to write down where this came off of so that I can reference it again. Because, you know, in a video I can tell you right where it came from, but when I'm looking at the hose again, putting stuff back together, you know, I'm going to use this as a reference to make a new set of hoses. So this came off of the distributor. Okay, I'm actually going to come back and make a little note. This here red one is not the VSV. This is actually the BVSV, and that stands for bimetal vacuum switching valve. So it's still a VSV, but it's a bimetal vacuum switching valve. I believe that the only difference here, and I'm happy I checked, is that this here is the VSV. Now, I could be completely wrong. Now, I mean, this is the VSV, but it's actually, the VSV is electronically controlled. It requires an electronic stimulation to switch the vacuum from one hose to the next hose. Whereas the BVSV only requires a heat parameter. So if this heats up to a certain degree, then it'll open up one or the other or both valves, or both vacuum ports. Okay, after making that quick correction on what I was saying, I'm going to go ahead and come to the other side of the EGR vacuum modulator, and I'm going to go ahead and pull that off. Oh, that's actually, I'm going to need 2 hands for this. You have this bottom hose that goes from the EGR modulator to the EGR. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that and pop that. Now I'm going to go ahead and mark these down with the duct tape really quick. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and just take off this EGR vacuum modulator. Very specific on how I'm holding it, because I'm going to have to mark it left side and right side. So I'm going to go ahead and just mark this one out as well. Okay, so continuing on from the VSV up top, behind the carburetor, I'm going to take this vacuum line off, and this line goes from the top of the VSV down and onto the front of the EGR valve. So I'm going to go ahead and just pop it off and pop that off. Again, I'll be sure to mark those out. So I'm going to see, I don't really see anything else connected to the EGR valve, not at the moment. So the closest thing from that would be right here, which would be from the intake manifold. Is that right? Let me just check that really quick. That'd be your canister. Yeah, it actually doesn't say anything of what it would be. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this vacuum hose that comes off of just the intake manifold. And that comes across and over into the canister. Okay, to be honest, I'm not quite sure what the difference is of what I'm looking here. This here looks like a vacuum actuated valve. That's the hose I'm going to remove. I can't quite tell if this is the HIC or the high idle control or the idle up, but then I'm getting confused about these other 2 diaphragms over here, and I'm not going to say that it's one thing or another at this moment because I'm not quite sure. Even after reading my little diagram there, I'm just not quite seeing it. Okay, so I'm looking at this little diaphragm here. As I remove this hose, and it connects to this here green filter looking deal, and just below that you can kind of see, let me pull out a deal here. This here hose comes off the bottom of it on a 90 degree. So from the diaphragm, I'm going to remove all of that. Okay, I'm gonna have to remove that bottom one once I have other stuff removed. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a really odd circle. Off of the front of this VSV, you come back and you have a three-way T going in a straight line on that T. You're connected right on to the carburetor. From the right side of the T, you come across into this filter into this diaphragm over here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it from the diaphragm. I'm going to pull it right off of the carburetor. Well, when I do, it's off of the carburetor and then off of the VSV. From the bottom side of the VSV to the inside of that, or the center port of the diaphragm over here. I'm going to pull that off the VSV, pull it off of the port. So I am going to continue off of this diaphragm here, and there's a hose that comes through to the bottom of this. God, is that another VSV? No, yeah, it is. I think it is. What the heck? Anyways, from the bottom of this diaphragm, I have to pull that off. From the bottom of the diaphragm to the bottom port of this here connector. From the top port of that connector to the port on the intake manifold. Gosh, these are on there really tight. Ow! Keep getting myself pretty good. Okay. I'm not even going to pretend to know the name for this one. I'm not even sure. But for now, I'm going to call it the double canister. Or the, the double diaphragm. I like that. I'm going to call this the double diaphragm. If you happen to know what this is actually called, let me know. Anyway, there's a big hose coming off of this double diaphragm, and it goes back a little bit right into the intake manifold. So on the other side of the double diaphragm, we have this smaller hose that comes to the right side over here on this intake manifold. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that one off. I'm going to go ahead and try and pop that off. I'm going to go ahead and just give it a little tug. Bracket's in the way. Anyway, you see which one I'm pulling. That one's coming off. Okay, I'm going to come to this large hose, which comes onto the left of the canister. But I'm going to take this left one off this canister, and I'm going to pull it right off of that. At least I'm going to try to. Okay, continuing on with the canister, I'm going to go from the right side of the canister down and into it would be this hose there. It would be the frontmost metal hose line that comes up. So again, from the right side of the canister to the furthest most front right solid hose line. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that middle hose line. You see there used to be one here. Sorry, my hand. There used to be one here. Then you have a second and a third on the back side. I'm going to take this middle hose line coming off of the solid metal line, and that is going to come up. I'm sorry, I'm zoomed in. That's going to come up to the mechanical fuel pump on the front side. So let's go ahead and take that one out. These ones are going to require a Phillips head screwdriver to pull off the little clips in it. So make sure to have a Phillips head screwdriver ready. Okay, the same exact spot, you have the rearmost solid metal fuel line, and that is going to go onto the back side of the fuel pump. Now I'm going to go from the front side of the fuel pump, and that's going to come across and up into the carburetor. I believe that's right into the jet. So I'm going to just pop those off and mark them off. Okay, back on the passenger side of the vehicle. Right above this EGR valve is this hose here, which connects to the port underneath the carburetor. And this little hose is going to come right back to here. Everything past that is a solid hose line, a solid metal hose line, and that's going to come around to the back side over here. I will probably not remove this, which connects to, gosh, I don't even know what I would call that. Power steering. This is power steering. Well, then that's just your power steering. Yeah, I'm sure. It goes into this. But anyhow, what I am going to remove is this hose here, which goes, again, from the bottom of the carburetor, just above the EGR, over to this solid metal line there. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I think that I am actually done pulling vacuum lines and hoses off. I can't quite see anything else at this exact moment, but I'm sure we'll come across something or another. The next video I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start pulling plugs, pulling off the wiring harness and getting the wiring harness out of my way. And this is the mess of hoses that have all been marked off where they go with duct tape. So I mean, I definitely have a collection of goodies that I'm gonna have to go through. So I mean, it's really not a whole lot of hoses. I was expecting a lot more, but again, it's a simple engine with simple parts and a very simple amount of hoses. Well, there it is, folks. I went ahead and I removed all the vacuum lines and a couple extra hoses, I suppose. I started at about 7 o'clock. It's now 8:30. So I mean, an hour and a half, give or take, considering that I was recording. So about an hour's worth of work to take out all the hoses and all the vacuum lines and mark them all off. I mean, I just showed you guys my big old pile, or my good sized pile here. I mean, if I was just pulling hoses, I could have pulled all those hoses, you know, in a matter of minutes. But I really feel like I'm going to save myself a lot of headache further down the road when I go ahead to put everything back together. And you know, just taking the extra time. It was only really an hour's worth of extra work, or an hour and a half of extra work, and just to very slowly and methodically take out all the hoses and mark them off. I think that's it for this video. If you guys liked the video, if you liked what you saw, if it was at all helpful in any way, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to have a lot more videos on this. You know, this is going to be the one of the first videos that I posted about this. There's going to be a lot happening with this Samurai. You know, it's completely stock now, but I've got some big plans for it. And, you know, I'm going to record the entire time. So, just definitely stick around and come back for my next videos. Thank you.